Good afternoon, everyone. Chris Berryman here, coalition builder and founder of Bringing Humanity Together. Welcome, everyone, to our Bringing Humanity Together live stream. Today is another terrific Tuesday. Hope your day is going well on this fantastic day and making it your day. This is one of the three open forums under the Bringing Humanity Together umbrella where people can discuss topics related to the workplace, humanity in the workplace in a very positive and constructive way. We want to know what the issues that are out there that are facing people today because it is our goal and our mission and our purpose to work both with employers and in employees to bring humanity back into the workforce. And as always, we're always going live every Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, all at 3 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. Just remember, we have a 15-minute meet and greet on all calls from 2:45 to 3 o'clock. So please come even join us for the meet and greet for 15 minutes. We will love to have you a part of that meet and greet. And feel free to invite your friends, co-workers, fur babies, and everybody that you know to our events, or even share the replay with them, whether it be our YouTube channel or also on LinkedIn Live. And today is our host. It's the great Sandy Chernoff, and she will be sharing some exceptional listening ideas today when it comes to effective communication. That's what we'll be talking about today. And remember, I also host a Conversation for Humanity on Wednesday. And as you see, Carla Finnegan is here with us today, too, as well. And she hosts Humanity Happy Hour as well on Thursday. And as you jump on, ladies and gentlemen, feel free to comment, whether it be on LinkedIn Live or also on YouTube, and let us know where you're watching from. If you have any questions, concerns, comments, show topics, whatever, please put them in there too as well. And one of us will definitely reach out to you and have that great and engaging conversation. And remember, we can have up to 6 people on a live stream at any given time. So if you'd like to join us live, the live link will be posted in our YouTube channel and also on LinkedIn Live here shortly, so you guys can join into the conversation and everything like that. So, hello, ladies. How are you guys doing today? Uh,
We're doing
on
great, Chris.
terrific Tuesday.
It's even sunny here.
Laura's here. Hello, Laura. How are you doing today?
Very well, really well to see you all.
It's always good to see you, Tara. We love having you on the conversations.
Thank you. Just as much as I enjoy being here.
Well, they're always interesting.
Yes.
And they're fun.
Yes, they are.
That's why we like them.
That's right. We should do more of them.
Don't brag too much. You have audio and video today. Wow.
That's a good thing.
Keep it quiet before we go.
Don't brag. Don't brag. Yeah, okay. The call just started.
It's all good. All good.
All in good fun.
So, what good news do you have for us, Sarah, across the pond there in England? What's going on over there?
Good news. Oh, good news is I have just had a meeting with you know him actually, Bogart, and we've been talking about an upcoming book series that we are putting together. And I won't give you too many details on here, but I would like to speak to you all regarding the opportunity, because if you would like to contribute or consider contributing to the book in terms of writing an essay for it, so to speak, it's based on humanity at work, and that's the title of the book. And so if it's something you think you'd be interested in contributing in, we'd love to have you. So that's my good news.
That is awesome.
Sounds good.
So please consider it.
Okay. Well, think about it.
Absolutely, we will. So if you go to
Because I have a book.
Yeah.
Sure, I have a book. I've actually
You do?
written
Right.
written a book.
That's
And
right.
because people bugged me to write a book. So first of all, I was going to write a big book on soft skills that would have been about this thick. So then I thought, no, not a good idea, because people, they don't really read those big books. They show people they have them, but they don't really read them. So I decided to write a smaller one just on communication, because again, that's the
Right.
cornerstone. And so that's what I did in the end. And I had a really good editor. She was terrific.
Oh,
So
brilliant.
it was very
That's
helpful. She kept saying to me, "You need more stories. You need more." So I made a story file. And then every time she asked me for a story, I would go into my story file and see what I could find and send her one.
Yeah.
Nice.
Hey, stories sell.
Well, the thing is, this,
Connect with stories.
well, that's right. But every chapter is laced with stories, and that sort of illustrate, what we're trying to get across. And at the end of the chapter, of each chapter, I give the reader an exercise to try out what they learned. And then the very last page is just a numbered list that sort of summarizes the chapter. So see, key takeaways from secret number 2, accountability. And there's just 3 things in there. But every chapter at the end, there's just a list of the key things that I want people to take away from that aspect of communication. And
right.
it's just, it just sort of summarizes things. Like listening, that has the biggest list.
Yeah.
But it's just, it's a matter of people understanding that the key to getting along with people and to being successful in every aspect of your life, whether it's family or friends or volunteer work or your actual work, if we're not communicating effectively, we're going to have all kinds of issues. And a lot of people think because we've been communicating since we were born that we know how to do it.
How, huh?
But in fact, a lot of people aren't very good at it. Hi, Lisa. And
Hi.
so it's a matter of understanding what that actually means and how to do it well. And if we can learn how to do it well, we will have far fewer disappointments, resentments, confusion, miscommunication, which all end up in issues and also cause us a lot more stress. And of course, during this pandemic right now, nobody needs more stress. So it's just a matter of understanding that this is a really, really important issue, in terms of it's a skill that people really need to have. And if they do, then, they'll have a lot less issues in their life, in terms of what goes on with people. And as I've explained to Chris, just because somebody's looking at you doesn't mean they're listening to you, because we're not mind readers. So we don't know what's going on in somebody's head. And if somebody is tired or hungry or not feeling well or has a problem of their own, all those things are going to supersede anything that you're saying to them. And as I've said before, don't ask them if they understood you, because they're always going to say yes, because they don't want you to think that they're stupid or that they weren't paying attention. So that's not the right question to ask. The question to ask is, what do you think I expect of you? And then you'll get a different answer, because they're going to have to tell you what they heard so that you know that, in fact, they did hear your message. The other thing that happens sometimes when we're having conversations is we're having them in a place where there are lots of distractions. Maybe there's traffic noise. Maybe there's lots of business machines. Maybe there's people talking on their cell phones. Maybe there's people walking in and out of the room. All those things are very distracting. So if you have an important conversation to have with someone, you should have it in private. Either in your office with the door closed or their office with the door closed, or somewhere where you're not going to have all these distractions, because that makes it very difficult for them to focus on what you're telling them. So it's, you have to think about some of these things when you're having an important conversation with someone. And, people don't pay attention to a lot of this stuff. And, a lot of people don't tell you that they're not feeling well, or they're hungry, or they're tired, or, whatever. We don't know those things. But it's just sometimes you might want to ask, but, it's just a matter, they might not tell you either, but it's just a matter of making sure if it's something important that they're actually going to hear your message. And, because we're not mind readers, I often start my active listening workshop by looking around the room and go, so do we have any mind readers in the room? Because if we do, you can leave now.
I love it.
They crack up. I think that's really funny.
Talk about an icebreaker.
Well,
There you go.
I've never had anybody leave the room, Carla. So
I know. Who's going to be the one to ask?
I mean, if you're a mind reader, it doesn't matter, because then you can tell that the person is not listening or whatever. And that's why I told you I have that little video that I show that's a a CEO talking to her management team about an upcoming
And
merger.
we have to find that video. I want to
Okay.
find that video on one of our calls. I think that will be hilarious, but yet very insightful.
It is very insightful. It's hysterically funny because, again, we never get to hear what's going on in somebody's head, but in this video, you do. And of course, the CEO is standing there looking at her management team, who are all looking at her. So she has no idea that about half of them aren't paying any attention.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, it's just, again, human beings are kind of interesting. And if we were all the same, it would be exceedingly boring. But by the same token, we have to pay attention to certain things, especially when it's important. And, it's the same thing with our kids or, our family members. It's not just at work or, with friends or doing volunteer work. It doesn't matter where you are. If you're telling your kids something important, then you need to make sure that they heard what you told them.
Mm-hmm.
Because, you want to make sure they stay safe or they do what you expect or, whatever. And with my kids, because they know I'm heavily into communication. So if they ask me my opinion on something, I look at them and go, so you really want to know what I think? And they say, yeah, I want to know what you think. Are you sure? Because, I try not to mix in because my kids are all adults. And when my son got married, all my friends told me, wear beige and shut up. That's what I was told. Like, don't mix in. It's their business. It's, especially now that they've got kids. I never offer an opinion unless Mark and Kim ask me. And then I check several times to make sure they actually want me to offer my opinion. Because otherwise, I just feel it's their family, they're their boys, and they should do whatever they want to do, in terms of how they're managing the kids and so on.
And I would shut up.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I would never arrive there and start telling them, oh, you shouldn't be doing that. You should do this, whatever. And I get along very well with my daughter-in-law. And the last thing I would want to do is wreck that relationship.
Oh, yeah.
We have a lot in common. Kim blogs a lot like I do, and she also presents a lot of workshops. So we have a lot in common. And we sort of like that. It's kind of fun. We talk about our work and share stories and stuff. And one of the times that she came to Vancouver, Yale and I actually went and heard her. And it was very funny because it was for teachers. And it was at a school in West Vancouver. So we went, and there was a guy at the desk. And Kim obviously told them that her in-laws were coming because we came to the desk, and everybody there is young except Yale and me, two gray-haired people come in, So the guy at the registration desk looks at us and he goes, you must be Kim's in-laws.
How'd you guess? Yes.
Was
I'm surprised Yale didn't say no. Our kids are old enough to go to school here.
It's just hysterical. But anyway, she did a very good job, and she actually, I think the reason she wanted us to come is she uses the boys as examples for certain things, and she even had pictures of the boys in her presentation. So we enjoyed it very much. And I told her afterwards, that was good, Kim.
Yeah.
And she's written a book with her mom.
Oh,
because
nice.
her mom also was a teacher. Both of them have a master's degree in education, and
Awesome.
so they wrote a book together, which I think is very cool. But Mindy and I also get along because we have a lot in common, and now we have grandchildren in common. So when I go to Toronto, we sometimes just even go out to lunch together, the two of us. But I mean, again, communication is just so important in every aspect of our lives. And again, some people are just naturally good at this. They just are. But a lot of people are not. And those that aren't end up with a lot of issues. And, that's sort of sad. But it's very important to be a good communicator and to pay attention, to other people. Like if somebody's talking to you, then you need to focus and pay attention to what they're saying. So it's just a matter of understanding how we can get along with people better if we communicate and if we're respectful and, all those kinds of things. But yeah, this videographer he was pretty good, Chris. He really was. We had a long conversation before he started because I wanted to make sure that I was going to have what I wanted, in terms of the videos and so on. And
So
he was very good.
so Sandy, should we play the whole video?
If you want to, I don't think it's that long. This one isn't that
Okay.
long.
Well, yeah, it's only a little under a little over 3 minutes, so it's not that long.
Yeah.
So here we go from none other than our great soft skills trainer and leadership here at Bringing Humanity Together, Sandy Chernoff. So here's Sandy in her own words.
I think the most important communication skill is listening. And I think if people can practice that skill, they will be very excellent communicators. You cannot learn anything when you're talking. The only time you can learn is if you're quiet. And if we really and truly listen and we focus in on what people are telling us, we will learn all the right buttons to press to help them to get what they need and what they want and to generate that voluntary compliance. So I think if you're a really good communicator, it means that you're a really good listener. Because the truth is, particularly in emotional exchanges, the verbal part of the message is only 7%. It's 38% tonal, 55% nonverbal. So in all, it's 93% nonverbal. Now, if you're having a normal conversation, it won't be quite that much, but you still have to craft the message so that it will resonate with the person with whom you are having that exchange. So you need to understand who they are. And the only way you can do that is if you really listen to them and find out what matters to them and the things that they're interested in, so that when you want to get something across, you can package that message in a way that will impact them. People who don't listen well have a lot of conflict in their life. And usually relationships break down because of misinterpretation of conversations. So if we are active listeners or reflective listeners and we get feedback to make sure that the message we sent was the one that was received, we will have far less conflict. Human beings have a choice every day when they wake up. They can choose to have a good day, or they can choose to have a bad day. It's their choice. And basically, I choose to have a good day. I think that when you face things in your life, you have those choices. And I would rather face them with a positive attitude than with a negative one. And I think people who do that are happier and have more energy about them because they look at the glasses half full instead of half empty. And it's just more comfortable to be around those kind of people. And we do have those choices. Like, why would you always be unhappy? And who would want to be around you if you were? And I also think that if you're going to have energy, you need to be fit. So you need to take care of yourself. That means fitness from a physical perspective, fitness from a mental perspective, and also from the point of nourishing yourself. One of the things that I teach, I have a memory workshop, and I teach that not only do you need to have aerobic exercise for your body and your lung capacity and your cardio capacity, but you need to have neurobic exercises.
Isn't that amazing from Miss Sandy herself? That
Great job,
was
Sandy.
Well, the videographer was good, Lisa. As I said, I had a very long conversation with him before I hired him because I wanted to get across to him what I wanted to accomplish with the videos on my website. Because people kept telling me, you need video on your website. No. And I said to Chris the other day, I looked at a lot of videos on people's websites, and it looked to me like they did them on their cameras. They were so unprofessional. And I decided I wasn't going to do that. If I was going to put video on, it was going to be professional video. And that's why I hired a guy. Yeah, it cost me. But in the end, I think it was worth it. And I've had a lot of good feedback from the videos, because people sort of like to get a sense of you. And if the video's good, they can get a sense from the video. And I think people can get a sense of my passion for what I do and sort of my presentation style, if you will, from those videos. And that was sort of the idea. And, I mean, it just is what it is, but it's something that depending on what you do, I mean, because I basically give live workshops, they need to see it. But, it just depends what you do. But it's also a way of sort of getting yourself across to people and, whatever, just an idea. But again, as I said in the video, I think the most important communication skill is active listening. People think that they listen. They do. People think that they know how. But most people are not that good at it because they don't focus. And it's also hard to focus for very long on somebody just talking at you. That's a difficult thing to do. And that's the reason why. Yeah, well, that's the reason why when I give a workshop, it's not a lecture. And I tell people that at the outset. I actually had some people walk out. Well, I was doing it at the dental convention. And I told them at the outset, I said, I want you to know this is not going to be a lecture. This is going to be an interactive learning experience. And I'm going to put you to work to do some things. So anybody who doesn't want to be active in their learning experience should leave now. And about 4 people stood up and walked out of the room. But what I didn't know is there was a big lineup at the door. And so as soon as that door opened, about 6 or 7 more people came into the room.
There you go.
So what I generally do is I teach a concept and then I give the attendees something to do. So sometimes they'll answer a questionnaire and then we'll debrief the questionnaire. Or they'll do something with a partner and we'll, like with active listening, I have people partner up and practice on each other. And then I get feedback. Or I'll have them do a group activity of some sort. And then we debrief that group activity. Sometimes I play a game. And actually, when I start active listening, we play a game. I have everybody number off, depending on how big the group is. And each group gets an envelope full of colored Post-it notes. And I tell them, be sure you take all the Post-it notes out of the envelope because you're going to make a sentence that defines active listening. And the first team to get it correct will get prizes. So even adults like prizes. So it's a fun way to start the workshop. And I do that with time management. I do that with stress management, the same thing. So that, we start with a game and I bring prizes. And it's just a fun way to sort of break the ice, if you will. And I really like people to be actively involved in their learning experience because if they are, it's more retentive. And also if they have fun and it's interesting, it will also be a more retentive experience. And then the company or, the group, then they get more out of it. And so it's a better return on their investment. And that makes companies and it makes people happy. That, plus I told you the other thing I always do is I always provide a fully documented syllabus. And that way what they do at these big conferences is they put it up online so people can download it or whatever they want with it, but it's up there. But when I do it live in somebody's office or if they book a hotel room or whatever, I tell them if you want me to print it, I have to charge you. But I'm sure you have a copying machine in your office. So I will send you the PDF and you can just copy it and give it out. Or if your people come with a laptop or an iPad or whatever, just forward it to them so that they've got it on their machine. Because sometimes that's what some people do. They come with their device. But it's just a matter of, I want them to have a takeaway because if you do a half day or a full day, people will not remember everything from that long a session. There's no way. So this way they have something to refer back to. And I also leave space in there for, if they do the questionnaire, it's in the handout. But if they're doing an exercise, I leave room for them to comment on the exercise so that they also have that to take away. So they can also, take away whatever came out of the exercise. And this way people don't need to take copious notes because it's very distracting. And also sometimes people don't write down the right things, or they don't write them down correctly, whatever. Every aspect of each concept that I deliver is fully developed in the handout. So they really don't need to take copious notes. They can underline things, in the handout if they want to, that's fine. but they don't need to be writing because it is distracting and you can miss stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So I prefer that they have, they have this to take away. But it's just, it depends on how you like to do things. And because I have a degree in education, that's what I learned was really a better way of, breaking things up and having people actively involved in their experience. And I also like the discussions because I think it's good when people are talking about stuff together and then we share, whatever they came up with. And that's why I also ask my HR people, Lisa, to give me the situations that their people have struggled with so that it's something that resonates with them so they see, why they're learning these new concepts and skills and why it would be a good idea for them to start using them.
Exactly.
And when they do that, they will be more likely to use it. Adults learn when they see need. And when they see the advantage, they'll do it.
Right. Put it to use in real life and they'll definitely, yes.
Yeah. Because I always tell HR, I can make stuff up, but if it doesn't resonate and it doesn't make sense to them, it's not nearly as effective as something that they've actually experienced and didn't have a good outcome from.
Mm-hmm.
Now they can see that with these new strategies and these new approaches, they'll have a far better chance of having a better outcome.
Right.
And that means, and I told you that with these big law firms, because I've worked with most of the big law firms in downtown Vancouver, and when I've come back, months later, some of the staff come up, I'm still using that stuff you taught me, it really works. So I'm
Great.
going, yay.
Right. It's always nice when you get feedback like that.
Yeah.
Always like the guy that says, "Oh, you're back. Did you bring candy?"
Yeah.
That was really funny too, Brian. But it's just, with the staff, because some lawyers, not all lawyers, but some lawyers can be very egocentric. And it makes it difficult. Yeah, it makes it difficult for the staff. And, so I said to them, they said to me, are the lawyers going to get this? And I said, what do you think? And they said, well, then what good is it? I said, well, if you change your behavior, the chances are pretty good that they're going to change theirs. It's just a matter of how you react to things and how you deal with things. Because one of the companies, the lawyer said to me, you're teaching the staff to be assertive? And I said, well, it depends how you look at assertiveness. I said, to me, assertive means knowing what you want and asking for it in an honest and respectful way. It doesn't need to be nasty. It just needs to be honest and respectful. And if they're doing that, then, the lawyer has to understand we're a team. Their staff is part of their team and they need to work together so that the outcomes are going to be beneficial to everyone. And if you're always yelling at them and being nasty to them, they're going to make more mistakes. So this isn't going to work very well for anybody. So it's a matter of appreciating what they do and thanking them and encouraging them. And if you do that, the soup's in the microwave. No. Okay. All right. Yes, I know. So it's just a matter of, it's just a matter of how are we dealing with people? How are we dealing with our support staff? And again, if you thank them and you acknowledge their contributions, it's going to be a much more pleasant relationship than the other way around. And they just need to learn. I have also dealt with some of the lawyers because I've taught at the Law Society. And at a couple law firms, I even taught lawyers. I couldn't believe that they wanted to. But anyway, whatever. But it's just, when a friend of mine used to do the continuing ed at the Law Society. And I phoned him when I started to do this and asked him if he thought it would be a good idea if I came and, did some of this stuff. He started to laugh. He said, the lawyers won't do that. And I went, okay, fine, never mind. So one of the times that I did active listening and I had the roadblocks up on a slide and there was a guy sitting very close to where I was standing and he said, I do all those things. I said, really? I said, well, maybe you just want to try and work on one of those things at a time.
It's a
He was proud, huh?
In healthcare, we had physicians, that were like up here and everybody else was, down here. But it's a team thing. And there was a physician I was working with that we were discussing a particular concept. And I said, I never learned that concept that way. I appreciate you showing me how you approach managing this. And he looked at me like I was kind of crazy. He says, what? I said, thank you. And he's like, I've never had anybody thank me for actually showing them something. I said, well, we're kind of in this together. I learned one way, you're showing me another way, and it makes total sense. He was just like, didn't know how to handle it, I said,
Well, it's kind of funny. I mean, I've worked with the nurses union here. I haven't really worked with doctors, but I've worked with the nurses union. And one of the things that we also talked about was assertiveness and how the doctors sometimes are not very nice to the nurses, especially in the hospitals. And so I said to them, well, you've got to speak up. And they went, well, how do we do that? I said, well, you do it honestly and respectfully, but you tell them, we're working on this together. So we need to be on the same page and we need to be helping one another. So if you're yelling at me and pointing fingers at me, I'm going to be very uncomfortable, which means, God forbid, I could make some mistakes. We don't want mistakes with our patients. So we need to do this together. So, I'm very open to hearing what you want me to do, but you have to tell me in a way that I can listen to it and move forward with it. But a lot of times they get over here, that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Well, I mean, like we may have been taught as nurses to look for different signs and symptoms where they have something else that they're looking for. Well, teach me what you're looking for, because that helps me help you.
Exactly.
And it helps our patients.
Exactly, Carla. I mean, and again, you're just being honest and clear. And what's wrong with that? They need to understand that when we work together, we work together. So, why wouldn't we want to have the same information and so on? I mean, I never had that much trouble with the dentists. I mean, they know that they need support because, when they're working, it's four-handed dentistry. So, their assistant needs to be anticipating what they need next and so on and so forth. So we always have to be on the same page. And I told you that, depending on the dentist, of course, but by and large, particularly in my dad's office and my brother's office, we always, had those monthly staff meetings, and we talked about different things and how we wanted to handle certain situations, and we practiced in terms of, particularly if there was an emergency, what do you do? Well, the receptionist will phone 911, but we've got to make sure that whatever else is going on, and you've got to make sure the patient is okay. So it's just a matter of, and same thing with CPR. I mean, we had to review that. And so it's just a matter of, you got to know this stuff and you got to help each other and you got to pay attention. I mean, I had a couple of epileptic patients. Well, the last thing I wanted was for them to have, an epileptic seizure in the chair. But if they did, God forbid, you got to know what to do. So it's just a matter of, again, what are you learning and how are you working together on these different things? And that's why communication is so key. It's just really, really important.
So let me go to Lisa, because this has been picking up my brain right now since you're talking about active listening and how you can listen more effectively. In your role here for Human Development and Human Investment, Lisa, in your experience, how critical is that communication, and how critical can we also listen not only when we are teaching a workflow process or whatever, but it creates that dynamic that is truly an environment that we can both learn from at the same time? How does that show up to you in the world that you've worked in for over 20 plus years?
Well, really, active listening is very, very critical, because if you don't have that skill set to actively listen, you don't know what the other person needs in any atmosphere, in any workplace, or in any environment. So it's very, very critical to have that skill. And some people have it and some people don't. Some people are interested in practicing the skill, and other people only want to hear themselves. So, and that's just being real, right? And so that, in my experience as an HR professional, you have managers who, go through training, and as soon as they're done with the training course, it's done, it's over. when they're in the real world and they're having an issue or whatnot, they're a lot of times, some, depending on the individual, are not actively listening. They are only listening to what they have to say, and they only want to hear one particular outcome, whatever that might be, whatever they're looking for. And so they're not always, a lot of times it's operations, and it's just the way it works, right? But a lot of times they're not listening at all. And so if they or anyone really can learn that skill, and I believe it is something that you can practice and learn. And I know Sandy said it earlier too, that, you know, it is something that you have to practice. And without that practice, you're not going to get better. But the more you practice, the better you'll get. And the better the communication will be, and the better the relationship will be. And so that can only, to me, that's a very key aspect of any relationship. And it becomes critical in the workplace because people have to understand what each other needs to get things done. And so if we're working on a project or something comes up, if we're not listening to one another, then that project or that issue is not going to be completed or resolved. So it is very, very critical. I would say it's probably the number one skill that people need to have in communication is to be able to actively listen so that we can understand one another, so that we can get things done.
Yeah.
Well, even when I wrote my book, Lisa, I interviewed 3 people to help me do it. And I hired the one person who actually brought examples of books that she'd already published. And, you know, I didn't know anything about publishing a book. And so we sat down and she was explaining to me about choosing the font and deciding, you know, do you want the page numbers on the bottom of the page or the top of the page? And are you going to have some pull quotes, and do you want them, you know, in a little box, or what do you want to do with those? And we talked about all kinds of stuff. And I mostly listened because she was the one who had the experience. And I wanted her to help me make these decisions because I wanted the book to look professional. Because I've seen a lot of books, and Cheryl will probably, you know, confirm this. I've seen a lot of books that look like they probably ran them off on their own photocopier from their computer, and they don't look very professional. And I'll tell you one quick funny story. In an area in Vancouver, there's a bookstore. And it's an area that Yale and I shop in fairly often. So we walked by and he says, why don't you go in and see if they'll sell your book? I said, really? He said, yeah. Why don't you just ask? I said, okay. So I went in and asked to speak to the manager. And I had my book in a bag. And I said, I was just wondering if you would be interested in selling my book. And she looked at me and she went, is it self-published? And I said, yes, it is. She went, oh, you know. But then when I brought up my book, and I showed it to her, and she said, oh, well, it doesn't look self-published. And I said, well, that's because I had a professional book project manager, and she designed the cover, and she helped me with the fonts and the design inside the book and so on and so forth. So, you know, she sort of thumbed through the book. She said, okay, we'll sell your book. So I had it in the bookstore.
Aren't you glad you went in and you went for that note?
Well, exactly. I mean, the thing is this, Carla, and I taught my kids this from a very early age. If you don't ask, you don't get. I mean, the worst that can happen is people say no, but you got to ask. So when Yale said to me, I went, yeah, whatever. So, you know, just really
got to practice what you preach.
Well, and what was really funny, you wouldn't believe the look on her face when I said it was self-published.
I can imagine. She probably didn't even realize she made that face.
No, probably not, Lisa. But when I showed her the book, she kind of went, oh, you know, it was like a complete
surprise.
Yeah. So it was very interesting.
And you wanted to probably go, I guess that was a no, huh?
It was, but now it's not.
Yeah.
So it was just,
you still want to take a look?
Yeah, it was kind of an interesting experience, you know, in terms of this bookseller. And, you know, I also took it into some of the libraries, and they also bought my book. And, you know, put it on the shelves and whatever. And then I did a couple of programs in libraries, and people wanted to buy the book. They didn't want to just read it, they wanted to buy it. So I always bring books with me. I call it my very expensive business card, but I usually bring them
So
along.
who prints the books for you?
Well, the thing is this, Lisa, some of my clients have bought 40, 50 copies because they buy them for all their managers or all their site supervisors or whatever. And so it's actually been, a pretty good, it's been pretty good. Yeah.
Who prints it for you?
Who printed it? Oh, a printer outside of Winnipeg.
So you just went to a printer and they put it together for you?
No, it's called Promontory Press, but the book project manager suggested this printer, and
Okay.
And they were terrific. I mean, I sent them, the rough copy, whatever, and they told me that I could look at it online, and I had the editor proofread it, my book project manager proofread it, I proofread it, and my son's a really good proofreader, so I sent it to Mark. But when I looked at it online, you won't believe this, guys, I actually found 2 spelling mistakes.
No way.
Yeah, Chris.
That the spell
It
check.
cost me a few bucks to fix it, but I figured, we might as well fix it. And because I got to look at the book online, and then they said, okay, are you ready to have it printed? I said, yeah. And they said, okay, and they told me exactly when it would be shipped to my house. And it came the day they said, and, they were really terrific. They were very good. So I was very happy with the printer. And that's because I just, everything that the project manager recommended to me, because she also got me the editor. She was really good. In fact, we became friends. I haven't seen her for a little while because of the pandemic, but before that, we'd about every couple of months, we'd go out for coffee and just catch up. And I referred her to a number of other people because I just felt she did such a good job. So, it's just a matter of what are you trying to do? And it's very important to find the right people to work with, no matter what your project is. And, she was just really good. And I just really like her. She's just, a cool person.
Awesome.
And but again, I listened to her because I was the one who needed to learn.
Communicate well.
Right.
It's really
Right.
great to have a
It's like Lisa
like
said,
that.
you can't learn what people need if you don't listen to them. You have to find out what concerns them, what they want to do, what they would like to have, these different kinds of things. And you also learn then what buttons to press in order to get the best out of them. Can't do that if you haven't paid attention. And so it is very important to listen to people. And again, can't learn anything when you're talking. So if you really want to learn about things, you got to shut up. It just is what it is. And so it's a matter of understanding.
Wear tan pants and shut up, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So Sarah, in the time that you've been publishing books and the experience that you've come through, all those many conversations that you've had, is effective listening really also critical in even the world of publishing too as well? What's your take on that?
Definitely. I mean, you have to have a brief, you have to have an understanding as to the author or the writer may want, in terms of the project, what it is that they're trying to do and what they're trying to achieve, etc. So we always start off with a pro forma, just having those initial meetings beforehand, to get that outline. And then once we have listened and, and we feel that we've assessed what the requirements are, then we relay that information back to make sure that we have it down correctly and have that thorough understanding. And then once we do that, then we're able to kind of progress, the project as well as the relationship, which is always very important for us. So yes, as you say, Sandy, it requires more listening from us, and even when we do editing and proofreading and so on, it's very important to us that we don't weigh the voice that is the actual author. So we just make sure that the content is correct, you know, the format, the layouts, and all of that information. And just going back to what you said about, you know, illustration and book covers and so forth, you know, those things are so important now. And it'd be quite interesting as well, Stanley, just in the point that you made with the person that you spoke to. I'd like to know how when was that? When did that conversation take place? Like, was it recent or?
Oh, it's not that recent. This book was printed in 2003,
Right.
but
Okay.
but it, you know, it was just, what was interesting about this woman is that she has a lot of experience, and she designed the book. Like, she was the one, and you know, it's got a star on the front with all this, you know, communication kind of stuff going on. But the reason it's a 5-pronged star is because it's 5 secrets. And so each chapter, you know, and at the front of the book, and she even, the bullet points in the book are stars. She even, you know, did that. And see in the, oops, so you can see that every chapter is sitting in the middle of the star. And, you know, again, the bullet points in the book, she found little stars. And so she, you know, she was just really good. She was just on top of things. And what we decided was pull quotes. So, you know, they're in little boxes. You can see a pull quote there. And,
Sounds very creative.
Yeah, she was really terrific. And, you know, she said, you know, you need a picture of yourself and, you know, all that. So Yale took the picture. But, you know, even in this, I mean, I thanked my son because he's always daring me to do things.
It all started with a business card, right?
Well, here's what I said. One day in 2002, my son Mark said to me, "Mom, you're really good at this. Why don't you do it for real?" And I said, "I do this for real." He said, "No, do it for money." I said, "Don't be ridiculous. I'm old and I'm a dental hygienist." He rolled his eyes and told me to go to get a business card, so I did. Thank you, Mark.
That is awesome. That is great.
You know, it's just, you gotta, you know, your kids are just, you know, and at the very end of the book, there's a little communication summary. It just sort of explains why it's so important for all of us to, you know, to be a good communicator. And on the back, I actually have a couple of recommendations from people that I knew very well. So like one guy who's the founder of Success Road Academy and Vancouver Business Network. Sandy Chernoff knows that communication is the foundation of successful professional relationships. In 5 Secrets, Chernoff shares invaluable information that can help all professionals become better communicators and open the doors to opportunities that once looked impossible. I highly recommend this book to anyone who wants to have better relationships and communicate more effectively. And then another woman who's market research and communications, a woman who I know, and she's amazing. Her name is Marilyn Anderson. This book is pure Sandy. Clear, concise, engaging, and memorable in a very practical way. Sandy brings communication concepts to life using stories that will ring true to anyone. Most importantly, the lessons in this book will work in every relationship we have: business, family, social. Practice and apply immediately.
That is awesome. That is awesome.
So you know, it's just, and those are on the back.
Yes.
And, you know, the page in the middle of, you know, about the author. So, you know, there's a little bit about me, and that's where the picture is. And the rest of it is just, and I, you know, as I said, I thanked my son, but I also, you know, it also became apparent that, you know, this was just something. So I said, I owe a great debt to my son, not only for sending me out into the world with business cards in hand. He also offered the first round of proofreading on this book and was very good at it. My daughter, Allie, was helpful too, offering her experience from the books she's written. My daughter's written several books. And finally, my husband, Yale, has always encouraged me to write a book as he feels I express myself well. Thanks to all of you.
Oh, that's
amazing. That is
That's awesome.
amazing.
Well,
That
you
really
know,
is.
the thing is that, you know, and again, as I said, the editor kept asking me for more stories to put in so that it made it more interesting. And what was also good is she didn't have any background in communication, the editor. So if something was confusing to her, I knew that I hadn't written it well enough. So I had to rewrite it so that it was clearer. And so that was actually an advantage, that she didn't really have a background in communication. It helped me to make things more clear.
Right.
And I thanked her. I told her, I really appreciate this, because I said, without your background not being there.
Andy.
Right.
I bet at
So
the end
it
of
was-
it, Andy, as well, she was probably a more effective communicator as well by the end of the project.
From it too, Sherry, yes. But
Yeah,
it was
I'm sure
just,
she
it was,
learned a lot.
but it was just interesting. And I've had very good feedback from people who have read this little book, because they have found it to be exceedingly helpful. I think I told you one of the companies, it's a storage company, and she has an event once a year where she brings all her managers from British Columbia and from Alberta to a hotel in Vancouver, and she puts on a day. And I've been the person who has done that day a few times. And so she bought, I think, 40 books for all her managers. So one of the managers from Alberta, I think it was the second or third year that I was doing this, she came up to me and she said, Sandy, I've read your book 3 times. I made my husband read it. I made my kids read it. And then she looked at me and she said, you need to write another book.
So, ladies, what I'm going to do, if you allow me to do it, is one of our great inspirational teachers and leaders in his own right, John C. Maxwell. He has a Maxwell Minute
Oh,
that
cool.
I
Well,
just
this is
really believe
effective.
it's going to be fascinating for everyone. So here is John C. Maxwell with a minute about listening, and I believe it's going to really truly just uplift you. And here he is.
Hi, John Maxwell here. Welcome to Minute with Maxwell. As a leader, one of my most difficult challenges that I faced in my own life was listening effectively to others. I was not a natural listener. I was a natural talker. Anybody knows me, and my mother said that at 6 months, I was already talking to everybody. Well, if you're just a talker, after a while, you basically expect everybody to be the audience and sit and listen. But my life changed when a staff member came up to me one day and said, John, you don't listen to us. I protested. I was defensive. But after about a day of reflection, I agreed with her. I wasn't listening. So I began to make it a habit. I began to put a big L in the corner of my legal pad every meeting I went to. I mean, about like a 3-inch L, big enough that I would constantly see it. That stood for listen. And as I would sit with my legal pad and as we would interact, I began to practice listening. Today, I ask a lot of questions and I've become a very good listener, but it was something I had to develop. Here's what I do now. The great leaders, they get their leadership cues from walking slowly through the crowd and listening to the people. They listen, they learn, and only then do they lead. Put a big L in the corner of your legal pad today and start listening.
Yep. That was good.
Listen, learn, lead. Yes.
Can't learn if you don't listen.
That's right.
It's as I've said many, many, many times, active listening is the most important communication skill. Yes, we have to be able to articulate our thoughts and our ideas and so on and so forth. That is important. But we can't learn anything if we don't actively listen. And when we're working on a project, Lisa, for example, I mean, you got to be working with your colleagues. So we've got to be communicating effectively so that everybody is doing whatever they're supposed to be doing and they know clearly what that is.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a matter of communicating well. And if we can do that, we're going to have a very successful project. You're going to have really high achieving teams. And especially if the team leader is a good listener, because if the team leader, if he or she knows the team really well and helps all of them to fulfill their potential, then everybody wins. Because if they're doing their work at the highest level, it's a huge advantage for the team. So everyone wins. But it's just a matter of, you got to figure out who they are and what they want and what they can do and help them to achieve those things. And if you can do that, then you're a really good team leader or a manager or whatever the heck it is, doesn't matter what your title is. But if you really know your team members and are helping them to be the best they can be, it's a win for everybody. Because when people are doing well, their self-esteem rises and their self-confidence rises. And that means that they're going to work better. So
Right.
again, this is not rocket science. This is just a matter of working well with people. And you can only do that if your communication skills are good. So it's very important.
It
Well,
is
we
very
have one
critical.
of our favorite people who just now chimed in about this, and I'm going to ask probably you, Sandy, who actually said this. This is what he just said. Most people's versions of listening is quote unquote waiting to speak. How many people actually listen without filters? Who said that?
I don't know, was it John Maxwell?
No, I know
No.
who it was.
Who is it, Carla?
Brian.
Brian.
Oh, Brian, okay.
Absolutely. Brian
Yeah.
Summers said that. Brian, please join us today. We would love to hear your thoughts
Well, it's
about
true,
this.
because if you're not listening, I mean, there's no way you can learn anything, and you certainly can't learn how to deal with the people that you're working with or living with or, whatever, because it's the only way we figure out those things. And a lot of people don't practice that very well. They think they do, but in the end, they really haven't. And so some people just think, oh, I'll figure it out. I need to listen.
Well,
Whatever.
it takes the heat off of you when you're like, let's just say you're interviewing a prospective client or we're interviewing a company to work with. It's not about us. Yes, we can figure out what we can offer to them, but it's listening to them to see what they want to do, see what they're
Exactly.
looking for, and know about them and know about their structure and know about everything that they've got going on. And then you go, okay, I hear you saying this, that, and the other, and this is what we could offer for you.
Well, exactly.
Not you.
And that's why I say that in order for us to be successful, we need to have what I call a discussion interview with every new prospect to find out very specifically what they are looking for. And then we can offer them different elements. And I usually let them choose the elements that you think are going to be most beneficial to your people. And once those are chosen, then I put together the PowerPoint and the fully documented syllabus. But I like, to have a discussion with them and then offer them different choices of what they think would be most beneficial in the program.
Yeah.
I send them documentation that they can look at. And then we have another discussion. Okay, so what did you decide? What do you think is going to be best? And that way I know that they're going to get what they want. Because I told you, I've worked for a company in Toronto who actually is a payroll company, but they have a whole division for soft skills and they hire facilitators across the country. But they have someone on their team who does the research and puts together the programs and the facilitator guide and the participant handouts, but they never interview the client. So they only have these generic workshops. And they would send me the PowerPoint and the guide and, the whole 9 yards. But most of the feedback I got from the clients that I went to was, well, that wasn't what we expected. So, and I would say, well, maybe you should talk to LifeWorks and maybe they'll customize something for you. And I knew darn well they wouldn't. But anyway, I have to say that. And then I said, and then if they won't, here's my card. You give me a call and I will sit down with you and we'll figure out exactly what you need. And I will put together a program based on your specific needs. So it's just a matter of what are people doing? And lots of training companies don't customize. They don't. They have a generic workshop for this topic. So they have something for stress management. They have something for time management. They have something for, whatever. And they don't customize for the client. And I'm sorry, every organization and every individual is different. And so you have to find out what they are specifically looking for, Carla, like exactly what you said. And in that, when I have those discussions, I sit there with a notepad and I make notes on, the things that they're telling me. And then I say, okay, so you said this is something that you're interested in working on. Okay, so here's what I can offer you for that. And then you said this. And here's what I can offer you for that, those kind of things. And that's why I send them documentation afterwards, because I want them to choose which pieces they think are going to address those specific needs most beneficially. And that way they get what they want. And that way they're happy. And that's why I get repeat business, and why some of my clients even refer other clients to me, because they were very happy with what I did for them, and they tell their friends or their colleagues that, that's what I do.
Yeah.
Yeah, Chris?
I want to go down deeper into what Brian just said, and I'm hoping he can join us here in just a minute, because I love what he said. I'll go back to it. Most people's versions of listening is waiting to speak. Yeah, a lot of people have been taught if we want to really listen, we got to wait to speak and all that kind of stuff. But what really gets me, and I've learned this so much from him, is listening without filters. And I will go to you, Miss Carla. Can we listen without a filter or non-judgmental type of attitude? Can we do that?
It's not a matter of, yes, we have a choice. We can or we can't. We should.
We see the ones that are waiting to speak, Chris, they're not listening to you. They're formulating in their head what they're going to say next. So they're not listening. That's the problem with those people that are waiting to speak.
Well, I think that in general, most people learn or listen to respond. And so when they listen to respond, they're not really listening to understand. And that's the key right there. And so getting rid of filters or getting rid of things that distractions and things like that is very critical to listen to understand. Because if you're listening to understand, then you're really trying to know, or you're trying to learn what it is they actually need. And if you're just listening to respond, you're not getting that piece. You're not getting that learn piece, that piece of understanding the individual and what they need. And so there's going to be misunderstandings.
Right.
For sure.
For sure.
Sorry. Me? Did you ask? Is it me? Okay. Well, for me, I think that just adding to what Brian was saying, I think that there is often a tendency for people to sort of claim that they're really good active listeners. And normally what you would find is the reverse of that, that people that you detect or soon, find out or, have learned that they are active listeners is really by demonstration, isn't it, rather than somebody saying so. So I would add that, in terms of as a response to what Brian also said. I think also as well that active listening is very key to being a leader as well, because I think without it and without understanding the requirements of those that you're serving or those that you are assisting, you can't actually lead either, So I think that there is a really that in order to be an effective leader, you have to be able to demonstrate or have active as a skill, active listening. And I think that it's something that we can all do more of, as well.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. I think going back to what Brian said, I think sometimes people listen based on their personality or based on, so if you were to really get into like type of personalities, if you're a type B personality and you're talking to someone who's a type A personality, type B, if you're trying to get a message across, you may have to change your communication style or the way that you give the message for the type A person to really get the message. And same for someone who's type A, someone who's just wants the high level pieces and not the whole story. Someone who's a good storyteller might want to hear the whole story, but someone who really just wants the facts, you need to talk to them a little differently so that they'll hear the message. Otherwise, you're going to lose them in all of the message. So that, I think, is maybe what Brian is speaking to, is we have filters based on the type of person that we are, or the personality type that we have. So we listen differently. And so if we don't know that about a person, they may miss the message. And so sometimes you just have to change the way you're communicating, maybe.
Well, and I agree. One of the chapters in the book, Lisa, is on gender differences in communication, because men and women don't communicate the same, because our brains don't work the same. And I also have a chapter on tuning into personality types. So again, exactly what you just said, you've got to alter your communication style depending on what kind of a person you're talking to. So if you're talking to a controller who only wants the bullet points and the keys, then don't be anecdotal. But if you're talking to a supporter wants to know exactly what you want, and so they want to know exactly how you want them to do it, and all that kind of stuff. And if you're talking to an analyzers, they don't like to leave any stones unturned. So, they got to know everything about everything. So when you have an analyzer on your team, you don't need to worry, because they're going to check everything out. They're good to have on a team. And, if you have, this other personality type is the promoter, that's what I call them. They're the ideas people. And they have a hard time focusing on one thing at a time. You put a group of promoters together, they're very noisy, because they're all excited about everything that's going on, And what you have to do with a promoter is you have to stop them and say, you know what, I like this idea that you talked about. Can we focus on that idea? And can you give me some more information on that particular idea? Because they're very disorganized and they're very self-centered, and they just go on and on. I had a gal when I was local president of this women's organization that I belong to. I had a gal on my council who I had her do something at every council meeting, and I had her do it right at the end. And people stayed because they wanted to see what Barb was going to do. But she was one of these people that she's a procrastinator, so she leaves it and it drove me crazy. So I had to back off and just let her do her thing when she wanted to do it, because if I sort of would call her and have you done this yet? Of course she hadn't done it. And then it would just make me crazy. So I quit phoning her and I just relied on her to come up with it. And everybody stayed till the end of the meeting because they wanted to see what Barb would do. And she always did something very interesting. So, again, you have to appreciate what some of these different personality types can bring to the table. And you can't expect them to behave the way you do, especially if you're a controller. And, it's just a matter of figuring out what's what. But again, when you're speaking to a controller, the anecdotal version is not what they want. They just want the key points,
Right.
And most men are like that. Not all men, but most men are, speaking bullet points.
Right.
If men want more detail, they will ask you. And sometimes they do want more detail. And that's when they can ask you. But like this friend of ours that died recently, there was a thing at the law school about him. And here was the thing. If a picture's worth 1,000 words, Alan would rather speak the 1,000 words. And he was a real raconteur, and he was, one of those kind of guys. So there are guys that are like that too. But women tend to be more anecdotal, if you will. And when I gave a workshop on gender differences in communication to the Canadian construction women, and that's women who work in the construction industry. And I started out with, ladies, you cannot talk to your male colleagues the way you talk to your female colleagues. And they come up to me, why not? I said, because men in general are not anecdotal. And if you go on and on and on, by the time you get to the key things that you want them to know, they will have quit listening to you. Mm-hmm. So it's a matter of understanding who you're talking to. And again, if men want more details, and sometimes they do, they will ask you for more detail. Then you can give them more information. But otherwise, speak in short bullet points, 2-3 words, that's all they want. They just want the key information. So don't overwhelm them, because their brains don't work like ours do. It's entirely different. And that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. In fact, in some cases, it's very good. So it keeps you sort of more focused on what the key issues are. And it's just a matter of understanding that and appreciating it. It's good. So it's just a matter, again, that's why I have, these different chapters in the book, because it's on different aspects of communication. And you have to appreciate that, again, men and women don't communicate the same. So if you're dealing with a lot of men, you got to take on the male style of communicating. If you're dealing with women, that's okay. You can be yourself. But it's just a matter of understanding. And if you're dealing, again, with a controller, they're like men. If you're dealing with an analyzer, they like lots of detail. So you need to give them more time to figure stuff out. If you're dealing, with the promoters, you got to focus them, because they're going to be all over the map and they're very disorganized. But if you focus them, they will help you. And if you're dealing with a supporter, you got to be very specific and very supportive and give them very clear instructions, because they want everybody to be happy. So they want to do what you want to do, what you want them to do in the way that you want them to do it. So you have to give them very clear instructions. So it's just, again, it's a matter of who are you dealing with?
Right.
And we have to pay attention to who it is, so that we can communicate effectively with these different kinds of people. And there are lots of different kinds of people out there. So we have to adjust our communication style in certain situations. And that's why you got to pay attention. It's, again, not rocket science.
Right.
It's just, it's, you know what, Chris? It's humanity. It's a matter of
that it is. And I want to touch on briefly, real quick, before we go to our call to action, on what Brian just said here just a couple of minutes ago. The first one he brings up is the point is to listen with nothing between you and the speaker, so that when it comes from the speaker, when it gets to you, it hasn't been distorted by anything between you and the speaker. And then he comes back and says, in short, you have to get what's being said without adding, subtracting, manipulating anything from what's being said. And Brian, we love you. We like to have more of you on here each and every single day. You bring a great perspective. And that's why tomorrow, ladies and gentlemen, Brian Sumner is actually going to be leading conversations with the community and everything. So I will start everybody with the call to action for today. And I will start with you, Miss Lisa. What will be your call to action today?
So I'm going to kind of piggyback from what John C. Maxwell said. And in that, I think it's important to practice active listening. And so if you need a reminder, like putting a 2-inch or 3-inch L on somewhere to remind you to listen, so that you can, the big L, so that you listen to learn, and then you can effectively lead.
Carla?
Oh gosh, so many good call to actions today. I would say work on being a listener, of course, and try to understand the type of communicator and people that you're dealing with to best communicate with them after you listen to them.
Very true, very true. Sarah?
For me, I would reiterate the same, is to ensure that I'm doing more active listening. And I think that having these discussions is really beneficial for me, because I tend to do a lot of the listening. So I get to understand what the group is about, what is the message that you're trying to convey as well. And to hopefully understand you more and build relationships. Is really important for those that I meet thereafter. Another thing that really hit home to me throughout this discussion is that people are very diverse and very different, and to just bear in mind that one size does not fit all.
That's right.
That is true. That is true. Because if we had one size that fits all, we would become the very definition of being one and the same. But that's what makes humanity so unique. We can not only all come together as one, but we're uniquely different and even designed that way, because you know what? Sometimes a little different is a little good. It makes the spice of life, as they say, because without a little differentiality in your life, you're going to be like, hey, wait a minute. I had pizza again today. Why did I have pizza again? I need a little change, So, Miss Sandy, let's close this out, and I want to hear from you. What will be your call to action today?
Well, I think again, Chris, and I've said this over and over, I think that active listening is the most important communication skill. And the only way we're going to get good at it is if we practice it. And it means that you have to sort of bring it to a conscious level and be paying attention when you are listening to someone or when you are having a conversation, because otherwise we miss things. And it could be something very important if we're really not listening to the person who is speaking to us. So we have to open our minds and we have to focus. So it's a matter of getting the message from people. But in order to get good at it, you have to practice. So
That we do.
it's the only way to get good at it.
That we
That's
do.
right.
And this is my simple call to action. And ladies, you guys have knocked it out of the ballpark yet once again on the call to action. But this is the way I see it too as well. Not only can we do all that, I'll simply go back to this. Just be intentional in what you do and how you do it, especially from a place of listening. Because listening can not only turn into leadership, listening can turn into understanding, which then again turns into progress and growth, thriving. So everything will be a natural byproduct of what you do every day in every way. So again, thank you all for joining us today for Conversation for Humanity and her share and care today with Miss Sandy Chernoff. We appreciate you guys for all these Conversation for Humanity calls that we do every week. We appreciate you. And of course, Brian, thank you for chiming in again, sir. We greatly appreciate you. Now, next up should be Graham. Graham, come on down. You know, the prices, what, right? You know, what kind of game show it was? You know, so everyone, I greatly appreciate you guys, and I appreciate you ladies providing valuable insight to our great and growing audience and community. So we'll see everybody tomorrow for a Conversation for Humanity, hosted by none other than Brian Summer. So we'll see you guys tomorrow, and have a great day.
Bye
Make it
bye.
your day.
Have a great night.